An amazing find. 2,000-year-old biblical scriptures were recently unearthed in the Dead Sea area of Israel. First discovery of its kind since the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they had the contents of the minor prophets, "Do not contrive evil." It's said that they were hidden there at the time of the raising of the Second Temple by the Romans. This is by Joe Kovacs, WND. Sections of the books of the 12 minor prophets discovered in the Judean desert from the Israeli Antiquities Authority, in what's being hailed as the first such discovery in 60 years. It's a new set of Dead Sea Scrolls matching the Old Testament, and it's been unearthed in the Judean desert of Israel. As we know, about 70 AD is when the Romans demolished the Second Temple, and it was after that the disciples and the apostles and the disciples of the disciples started writing the New Testament. So up to then, it was only the Old Testament that was available. Now, the Israel Antiquities Authority on Tuesday announced its 4-year archaeological project, located fragments of ancient scriptures from the book of the 12 minor prophets, including the books of Zechariah and Nahum. One fragment written in Greek, with God's name appearing in Paleo-Hebrew, quotes Zechariah 8:16 to 17 verse, quote, "These are the things you are to do. Speak the truth to one another. Render true and perfect justice in your gates, and do not contrive evil against one another, and do not love perjury, because of all those things that I hate, declares the Lord." Please support my Patreon channel, since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. My Patreon channel will have 5 different videos from my YouTube channel every day. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. Now, the archaeologists, of course, deal with difficult conditions located in the latest Dead Sea Scrolls. Another feature is Nahum 1, verse 5 to 6, which says, "The mountains quake because of him, and the hills melt. The earth heaves before him, the world and all that dwell therein. Who can stand before his wrath? Who can resist his fury? His anger pours out like fire, and rocks are shattered because of him." The ancient treasures were located in what's known as the Cave of Horror, which was discovered just 4 years ago. The researchers actually had to ramble down a dangerous cliff to reach the opening of the cave, some 262 feet below the top, with gorges on each side. Archaeologists also used drones to survey portions of the caves that were difficult to reach, adding about half of the area remains unexplored. Now, the authorities stress that accessing the caves is forbidden on safety grounds, and the treasures were part of an Israeli project to prevent thieves from stealing Holy Land artifacts, a constant threat since the first Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered back in 1947 by a Bedouin shepherd in the same area. The first set of scrolls is considered among the most important archaeological finds of the 20th century, of course. Israel Hassan, the director of Israeli Antiquities Authority, IAA, noted, "The aim of this national initiative is to rescue these rare and important heritage assets from robbers and clutches of these people. The newly discovered scroll fragments are a wake-up call to the state. Resources must be allocated for the completion of this historically important operation. We must ensure that we recover all the data that has not yet been discovered in the caves before the robbers do. Some things are beyond value." And of course, I totally agree with him. There are a lot of universities that are operating digs in Israel, and they always find something. Most of them go with Bible in hand or epistles, letters from ancients in hand, and they figure out where a lot of these holy sites can be holding archaeological artifacts. Now, Hananiah Hizmi, head staff officer of the Civil Administration's Archaeology Department in Judea and Samaria, said, "This is definitely an exciting moment as we present and reveal to the public an important and significant piece in the history and culture of the land of Israel." He said, "In as early as the late 1940s, we became aware of the cultural heritage remains of the ancient population of the land of Israel with the first discoveries of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, in this national operation, which continues the work of previous projects, new finds and evidence have been discovered and unearthed that shed even more light on the different periods and cultures of the region. The finds attest to a rich and diverse, complex way of life, as well as to the harsh climatic conditions that prevailed in the region hundreds of thousands of years ago. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, he said. Researchers also found other things. Troves of coins from the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt, a 6,000-year-old skeleton of a partially mummified child. And they also found, this is really something, a basket they said could be the oldest in the world, as they used a figure of 10,000 years old. Isn't it amazing? A CT scan indicated the child was between 6 and 12 years of age, with skin, tendons, and hair still partially preserved, this 6,000-year-old skeleton of the child. On moving to flat stones, he said, we discovered a shallow pit intentionally dug beneath them, containing a skeleton of a child placed in a fetal position, IAA prehistorian Ronit Lupu stated. She said it was obvious that whoever buried the child had wrapped him up and pushed the edges of the cloth beneath him, just as a parent covers his child in a blanket. A small bundle of cloth was clutched in the child's hand. The child's skeleton and cloth wrapping were remarkably well preserved as well. And because of the climatic conditions of the cave, the process of natural mummification had taken place. The skin, tendons, and even the hair were partially preserved despite the passage of time. Isn't that amazing? This is just mind-boggling. 10,000-year-old basket, 6,000-year-old, 10,000-year-old basket. That's basically from the time of, the last ice age. Amazing. This is before the Great Flood, or just about then. This is on WND. Please leave your comments, and thank you so much for your support. Thank you.